Sergeant! The Pokrovsk trap is closing! The Ukrainian armed forces have turned the front around. The incredible has happened. A special forces landing operation has taken place. The enemy is in panic. These shots are blowing up the internet. Pokrovsk has become the end of Putin's army. Chersky and Zelensky made an urgent statement about the situation there. You need to hear this. More on all this coming up. Watch until the end. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Renata Aslanova and the latest events. Budanov's special forces made an emergency landing on the front line. Yes, Special Operations Forces of the HUR have launched a complex operation in Pokrovsk. Assault troops from military intelligence entered areas of the city that the Russian command considered to be under their control. The goal of the operation is to protect the supply routes of Ukrainian forces. It is noted that these areas are considered strategically important for Ukrainian logistics. Several helicopters are involved in the operation, and Budanov is on site personally directing the operation.
After the successful airborne operation, a ground corridor was established to the GUR special forces who had secured designated positions, and additional special unit forces joined them.
Combat operations are also ongoing, aimed at eliminating enemy attempts to expand their fire control over logistics in the area of responsibility of the GUR. Other special units are also carrying out combat missions in the sector.
For security reasons, the details of the operations involving the personnel of the engaged units are not being disclosed at this time. Coordinated work continues together with all components of the security and defense forces of Ukraine.
A few days ago, the Russian authorities claimed that Pokrovsk and its neighboring town, Mirnohrad, were allegedly surrounded. The Ukrainian side denied this, but acknowledged the difficult situation in this section of the front. Indeed, the Russian army has been attempting to encircle the city for a year now. The participation of Ukrainian intelligence officers in the operation was also confirmed by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky.
By my order, combined groups are also operating in the city. These include Special Operations Forces, Military Law Enforcement Service, the Security Service of Ukraine, and other units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine, including the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the main intelligence directorate has released exclusive footage of the Defense Forces operation in Pokrovsk. The video captures an airborne landing from a helicopter, the destruction of occupiers with drones, tank shootouts, and footage from soldiers' body cameras. The 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Air Assault Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported that the defense forces are continuing their operation to clear Pokrovsk of Russian troops. Ukrainian units have halted the enemy's advance in the northern part of the city and prevented the cutting of an important road. According to
the past few days, the defense forces have created opportunities to carry out the task of reinforcing our troops in our area of responsibility with additional personnel and equipment.
According to the paratroopers, an active clearing operation is currently underway in the northern part of Pokrovsk. Thanks to the coordinated actions of Ukrainian units, it was possible to stop the enemy from expanding their presence in this area and to prevent the road connecting Pokrovsk and Rodinsk from being cut off. At the same time, Ukrainian forces have liberated a significant section of territory previously advanced upon by the occupiers in the Dobropilya direction, which affects Russia's attempts to encircle Pokrovsk. This was reported by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky.
We are increasing pressure on the Dobropilya salient. We continue to liberate and clear territories, which forces the enemy to disperse their forces and makes it impossible for them to concentrate their main efforts in the Pokrovsk area.
President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky also announced results in eliminating occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction.
There are results in destroying the occupier. I would especially like to highlight the units of the 79th Separate Air Assault Brigade.
Sensations. A hellish battle in Pokrovsk, a city on the verge of explosion. Ukrainian forces are closing a deadly ring. The enemy's equipment is in ruins. Commanders are without communication. The Kremlin is in shock and lies about successes, but the scale of the disaster can no longer be hidden. What is really happening on this and other sections of the front? All this is covered in the following report.
A Ukrainian crew in a German Leopard tank crushes a Russian FPV drone ZH-Dun with a drop on the road. Apparently, its operator missed the moment when he could have launched the deadly bird into the sky. Currently, the situation in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad direction is very difficult, if not critical. Almost half of all clashes on the front line are taking place specifically in the Pokrovsk direction. Russian channels are reporting that the city is essentially encircled. They claim the Ukrainian armed forces have no chance, but the occupying forces might make a gesture of goodwill.
The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has received an order from the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Federation to ensure unhindered passage for foreign journalists, including Ukrainian ones, upon their request to the commander of the Union to visit the areas where Ukrainian troops are encircled in Rosnoarmysk, Dmitriv, and Kupiansk. The Russian command is prepared, if necessary, to halt combat operations for 5 to 6 hours in these areas, as well as to provide corridors for the unhindered entry and exit of groups of foreign media representatives, including Ukrainian ones, provided that safety is guaranteed for both journalists and Russian military personnel.
In order to portray the supposedly dire situation of the Ukrainian armed forces, the Kremlin wants to provide a corridor for Western journalists.
This is about hybrid warfare, media manipulation, drawing attention to the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces are in a bad situation, and specifically in the context that Putin needs, with excessive dramatization.
According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian armed forces, there is no talk of any encirclement. Fighting is already taking place on the outskirts of both Mirnohrad and Pokrovsk. President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that about 170,000 Russian soldiers are concentrated near Pokrovsk. At the same time, the delivery of ammunition and supplies to the Ukrainian armed forces is being carried out systematically. All the talk about encirclement is Russian disinformation.
There is no blockade of our defense forces in Pokrovsk by the enemy. These are merely statements of Russian propaganda that do not correspond to reality. The occupying enemy army is indeed increasing pressure in the Pokrovsk direction, particularly in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration area. The situation in Pokrovsk remains difficult and dynamic. Certain groups of enemy infantry are infiltrating the city of Pokrovsk and attempting to move and concentrate within this settlement.
There are, in fact, no AFU troops defending Pokrovsk at all. Because in the event that the situation takes a completely unfavorable turn, these troops can enter and evacuate to the north. Resupply is ongoing. Well, so what does this mean? It means that during the resupply of these, convoys, trucks may be used, or some other means of transportation might be less noticeable than large trucks. But again, the losses in these echelons can be much greater than in other cases, but still resupply continues.
Despite the difficult situation, even if the AFU will have to leave Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad, the occupying forces, having lost a huge amount of equipment and personnel, will in no way change the overall situation along the front line. This is also confirmed by the intelligence services of European countries.
Of course, it is also clear that sooner or later Ukraine will have to withdraw its units from the Pokrovsk district. But as I have said before, the Pokrovsk district falling under the control of Russian forces will not determine the overall situation in Ukraine. Anne Skivelsk, head of the intelligence center of the Estonian Defense Forces.
Putin claimed that Pokrovsk would be under the control of the Russian army a year ago. In reality, the Kremlin's plans have still not been realized.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now. Urgent, right now a real hell is unfolding in Kupiansk. Russian units are confused and losing control. Their plan has completely failed, the enemy is choking on their own positions, and the armed forces of Ukraine have regained a furious pace in their counteroffensive. They are confidently advancing, sweeping away the occupiers. See the current situation in the report.
The battles for control over the city of Kupiansk, a major transport hub in the Kharkiv region, are ongoing.
The situation in Kupiansk continues to remain quite difficult and challenging, but these days our forces have significantly more control over the area. We are steadfastly continuing to defend our positions.
Against this backdrop, Russian propaganda has once again released another batch of fake news. The bunker dweller claimed that supposedly Ukrainian troops in Kupiansk are surrounded and blocked. In
the city of Kupiansk and Horodny Krasnoarmysky, the enemy turned out to be blocked, surrounded. By the way, I discussed this issue with the commanders of the relevant enemy group. They are not opposed to allowing official representatives of the mass media, foreign journalists, and Ukrainian journalists so that they could go in and see with their own eyes what is happening there, be convinced of the condition in which the surrounded Ukrainian troops are, and so that the political leadership of Ukraine would make the appropriate decisions regarding the fate of their citizens and their military personnel.
But these statements have nothing to do with, in common with reality. This is quite a familiar old Kremlin tactic, media blackmail, and an attempt to demoralize Ukrainian society.
As of today, I believe the situation has stabilized. And I hope that our security and defense forces will be able to do everything to prevent the encirclement from being captured.
In reality, this is not an encirclement, but rather heavy local fighting.
The main direction is indirect. It's not Kupiansk itself, but the outskirts of Kupiansk. The occupiers' plans include the possibility of establishing control over this key railway station.
As of October 30th, Ukrainian forces maintained control over most of Kupiansk and key transportation hubs.
Russian occupiers have entrenched themselves in small groups on the northern outskirts of the city and in the western part, creating a foothold for further attempts at an offensive. That is, they are trying to change their tactics and strategy of combat operations in the urban-built environment. It is fundamentally different from the tactics used in Bakhmut 2.5 years ago, when the occupiers employed large amounts of armored vehicles and the so-called local assault tactics to establish control over this settlement. The main threat remains the northern direction, with the enemy attempting to break through to the Kharkiv-Kupiansk-Svatove highway. This route is vital for supplying Ukrainian units on the eastern bank of the Oskil River. From the south and east, Russian forces have been unable to approach the city. The main supply route for the armed forces of Ukraine continues to run primarily through the Kupiansk-Uzlovy railway station, which serves as a vital logistical point for transporting supplies, equipment, and personnel to the front lines. Alongside this railway station, the embankment dam across the Oskil River is also an essential part of the supply network, as it enables vehicles and convoys to cross the river and maintain the flow of resources. Although the dam is periodically targeted by enemy airstrikes in attempts to disrupt Ukrainian logistics, it remains operational and continues to fulfill its function. To ensure the resilience of their supply lines, Ukrainian forces have established pontoon crossings nearby, which act as backup routes and help keep the supply network open even if the main dam is damaged. Ukrainian units are located precisely in the area of the Sloviansk urban agglomeration. This is the main objective. In other words, the occupiers' strategic goal is to establish full control over the territory of Donetsk region.
However, the enemy has hit the tough defenses of the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian counterattacks are holding back the Russian advance.
At the present moment, Ukraine's defense forces are actively and diligently conducting comprehensive counter-sabotage operations in order to effectively prevent any possible infiltration attempts by hostile forces. Kupiansk is
not just another point on the map. It is a symbol of resilience, endurance, and military stamina. The Russian army is trying to take the city by attrition, but the Ukrainian defense is holding strong. No matter how much the Kremlin tries to pass off wishful thinking as reality, the truth is on the side of those who defend their home. And step by step, they are driving the enemy out of Ukrainian land.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video and stay up to date with the main news. More to come.